added new benefits, including telephone.
Be signing and doing the agreement today. So in 72 years, they've done 2 agreements, and we've done 2, as you know, in a period of a month. And I will say, because of your leadership and because of the fact that you are leading the way, we have many countries in your region, in your part of the world, that will be very quickly signing up also. They frankly would have been here today if we wanted it to happen, but we'll be signing others. And this can really lead to peace, real peace, in the Middle East for the first time. We've taken a very different path. You could say it's a back door, but I call it a smart door, not a back door. I call it a smart door. And this was a vision that I had a long time ago, and we had some incredible representatives, and I want to thank everybody here because your representation was brilliant. We watched over the years as we were criticized for going this path. And it just all came together, and now the same people that criticize, well, they'll find something else to criticize us. But we have other things happening that are very good, equally as good, very important, worldwide, very, very important. But it's an honor to have you here, and say hello to your family and your brother and all of those people that we so respect. Thank you very much.
As we say in Arabic, shukran, Mr. President. We are humbled to represent a nation which is only 48 years old, but full of hope, and wants to attract more hope in our region. Our region has suffered far too long, and we would like to show our people and our region and the world that there is some good news from our part of the world. I mean, this is one. All the good work we've been doing for decades, Mr. President, with your great nation. We've been the strongest trading partner of the United States in the Middle East.
That's right.
We want to continue doing so in all fields. And this is just a clear message that more should be done between the United States and the UAE. But now we can do it even with more nations, with Israel, and so many more.
That's true.
Thank you, sir, for your leadership. And if it wasn't for that, it would have been far more difficult for all of us to achieve.
No, I understand that well. It was something we felt very strongly about, and being friends with you, your brother, your family, you made it happen, and we appreciate it. And I think your country appreciates it, and the world appreciates it, so thank you very much. It's really great. Any questions, please?
What message would you like the Palestinians to take from today's event, sir?
Well, I think they see what's happening, and a lot of countries are joining up, and as you know, we don't make payments to them. We're paying a lot of money to the Palestinians every year, and we were not being treated properly. They were not saying nice things for many years. And nobody's ever done this before, but I stopped payment. It's a term that's used for a lot of things. It's called we stop payment. Because if they're not going to respect us, or if they're not going to speak well of us, we're not going to be involved. They, I think, are seeing what's happening, and we've been given very strong signals that they'd like to be a part of what's happening. So I think we'll see the Palestinians at some point, but before we see the Palestinians, we'll see other very important countries come into this transaction. They'd be here today, frankly, if we wanted them. So I think that you'll see some very great things happening in the Middle East. You're going to have peace without blood in the sand. For years you had blood in the sand. That's all you had, blood in the sand. You got nothing for it. They got nothing for it. Now you're going to have peace, and it'll be a real peace. And you have the most powerful countries, as an example. It's a great warring nation, if it wants to be, with a tremendous military, a powerful military, and they're really great warriors. And it was very important that we had you, and we've had great talks, as you know, with Saudi Arabia, with the king. And I think he's going to be terrific. I think he's got a very open mind. But I've had very personal talks with the king and the Crown Prince, and I think their mind is very open. They're very much, I think they're going to come along really well. So it's an honor to be here. We're going to have a ceremony outside. And I just want to say that being the first, because you were the first, being the first was very important that you be the first for us. because you're leading a path, you're leading a way, and it's something that people were very surprised at. I will say that even the biggest optimists were shocked when they heard about this transaction, and shocked in a very positive way. So I want to thank you for making it all happen. Thank you very much.
Mr. President, Iran has been very critical, as you know, of this agreement, and we've seen some security incidents in the Middle East over the last 24 hours. Will you be extending any security guarantees to those who have made
Well, we're working together, and we'll see what happens with Iran. I would say right after the election, within a period of a week, maybe a month, but within a period of a very short period, within maybe, literally a very short time, you'll have Iran coming back and saying, let's get this whole thing worked out. Iran is suffering. Iran, unfortunately, I don't want them to suffer, but their economy is tanked. They have a minus 27 GDP. Nobody's ever heard of a number like that. I think it's perhaps a record setter, but they're down 27%. And I think they want to make a deal, but they'd much rather deal with sleepy Joe Biden than me, because, we're going to make a deal, and I'll make a very fair deal. And I even suggested wait till after the election. Make yourself feel good. Wait till after the election. So we'll see what happens with Iran. I think Iran will end up being a part of a very large and very, very difficult part of the world. Look, the Middle East has been a very complex, very difficult part of the world. We're making it easier. We're making it a lot simpler. But I think right after our election, the American election, if we win, we'll have a deal with Iran. I think we're going to make a deal with Iran.
Mr. President, when do you expect other countries in the region to follow the UAE's lead and normalize relations with Israel? And which countries are you targeting in that?
Well, I don't want to say the countries, but we have many of them, and they'll be coming along rather rapidly, some before the election perhaps, but a lot of them after. And in that case, they won't be waiting for the election. It's just a question of getting it done. They are very, very excited about being a part of this. Some would have been a part of it today, in my opinion, if we wanted to, but we didn't want to press it. And we wanted to give you the dignity and respect because you were the first one. You were the first one. And we have Bahrain here, as you know, and Bahrain is signing today also. But we have a list of who's who. They'll be signing the deal. And it's an incredible thing that's happening. It's come a long way. Israel's come a long way, and the Middle East has come a long way. And it's really good for everyone. It's not just Israel. It's good for everybody. It's great for your country. Great for your country. And so it's an honor to be here. It's been so well received all over the world. It's been a real honor. Thank you very much. We'll see you outside. Thank you.
Let's go, Brad. Let's go, Brad. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
President of the United States, that's tape from a short time ago in the Oval Office with the Foreign Minister of the United Arab Emirates. It is a historic day at the Trump White House. The delegation from Bahrain also here. The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is here. Israel to sign normalization of relations documents with the UAE and with Bahrain. This brokered with the help of the Trump administration. Again, a historic day. Our national security correspondent, Vivian Salama, is with me as we wait. And Vivian, I may have to interrupt you if we get more of these tapes of the President's meetings with the dignitaries. But this is a very important day, as you know from your time in the region. Many of the Gulf states have wanted this for some time, but they haven't been able to get to the finish line. The Gulf states, especially the UAE, which views itself as sort of a Hong Kong of the Middle East, a business mecca in the Middle East, has wanted to put the Palestinian issue behind it, move on to a more pro-business, peace in the region approach, including to get Israeli scientific expertise. I'm sorry, Vivian, I need to interrupt you. Back to the tape, the President of the United States with Prime Minister Netanyahu.
This one, I want to show it.
Do you expect it?
Can I show this?
Sure. I would love that. This was a special token of affection given by myself and the First Lady to Prime Minister and the First Lady of Israel. And it's a key. We call it a key to the White House. And it's a key to our country and to our hearts. And you've been an amazing leader for a long period of time. And this is, in many respects, the big day, because this is something that's very special. And we just left UAE and Bahrain. We're going to meet outside in a ceremony. And it's just a very important event, and it's an honor to have you with us, baby. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I have said, and this is true, that you have the key to the hearts of the people of Israel because of all the great things you've done for the Jewish state and the Jewish people. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. Now we look forward to being outside. Yes, please. Any questions?
This is a great event. This is a great event, and these are tremendous achievements. We know that Israel is getting a lot. What is Israel giving back?
This is the Israeli press that wants to chip away at this.
Well, I think what really Israel is getting, and what we're all getting, but what Israel is getting more than anything else is peace. They're going to have peace. As you know, UAE, United Arab Emirates, is a great warring nation, a very powerful nation in the region, and they very much wanted to do this. Mohammed's a tremendous leader, like Bibi is a tremendous leader, and it was important to have them first, very early. And, you know, the relationship is fantastic, and a lot of people are surprised to see it. And as you know, we have Bahrain, and we have many nations ready to follow, many nations. No, not now, I won't, but you'll see, we'll be signing up other nations, and these are very strong agreements. These are very strong. This is really peace. This is serious peace. And so I think what Israel gets, the most important thing that they're getting by far is peace. Excuse me, one at a time, please.
Take the other one.
Who, which one?
Well, actually, see the one in the white. The one in the white.
In the white, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Michelle from Channel 20. Is it possible to know which countries will be following the Emirates?
Well, we'll be announced.
Maybe Oman?
Yeah, we're very far down the road with about 5 countries, 5 additional countries. Frankly, I think we could have had them here today. We thought out of respect, UAE, they deserved it. And Bahrain came immediately after. They really wanted to do it. But we'll have at least 5 or 6 countries coming along very quickly. And we're already talking to them. And they want to see peace. You know, they've been fighting for a long time. They're tired. They're warring countries, but they're tired. They're tired of fighting. And so you're going to be seeing further announcements. This is, you know, it's a very big day. I guess they said, so there were 2 countries over a 72-year period. And we did an additional 2, and these are great countries. We did an additional 2 in 1 month.
29 days.
But you're going to see a lot of very great activity. It's going to be peace in the Middle East. Say it.
Will you promote the F-35 deal even if there's no objective?
Yeah, we're gonna work that out. We'll work that out. That's going to be an easy thing. And you know, we've fought with UAE 4 times, 4 different wars. They've been very, very loyal to us, and we have a better relationship with them now than we ever had in the past. In fact, in the past it was very strained. We have a very good relationship with them. Yeah, all of that works out. That's going to be very easy to work out.
Should Israel feel less isolated today than they were this last week? And Mr. Prime Minister, maybe you can answer that question as well.
Well, I think Israel's not isolated anymore because I can tell you we have the 2 countries, plus you had an additional 2, as you know, from many, many years ago. And now you have a situation where many of the countries, and I can actually say most of the countries, but many of the countries in the Middle East want to sign this deal. And I think when that happens, hopefully after the election, because I really believe Iran wants to make a deal. They've had a very tough time. Their GDP is down 27%. Because of the sanctions and all of the other things, and I don't want that to happen. I want Iran to be a great country, a great nation. I think that would be a wonderful thing. But I think, and I've even said that, I've said that to representatives of them, you should wait to see the election first. There is nothing they or China or probably Russia would like better than to have Sleepy Joe Biden become the president. Because if Sleepy Joe won, they would own the United States, all of them. China would own the United States. So I told all of them, I said, wait till after the election, but after the election we have to make a better deal. I do say that. We're going to make a better deal than we would have. But with Iran, they certainly should wait till after the election because, frankly, if Biden wins, they'll make a much better deal. But I'm going to make a good deal with Iran. I'm going to make a deal that's great for Iran. It's going to get them back. We're going to help them in every way possible. And Iran will be very happy. Iran will be very rich and very quickly. But I think they should wait till after the election. You understand what I mean by that? Because a dream for those countries would be Sleepy Joe.
Do you believe you will also broker a deal with the Palestinians?
Say it?
Do you believe you will also broker a deal with the Palestinians?
Yeah, I think they come along, and they're already, obviously we speak to them. They've come a long way. We used to pay them $750 million a year when I got here, and I said to people that negotiated with them before, why did you pay when they treat the United States with such disrespect? They speak so badly. Death to America, death to Israel. I said, we give them $750 million a year. I said, why didn't somebody cut off those payments? Well, we didn't think it would be appropriate. I said, well, I do. And I cut off the payments to them, as you know. But other countries give them money. You're dealing with very rich countries. And these countries are now all signing with us. They'll all be signed with us, all of them. I spoke with the King of Saudi Arabia. We had a great conversation. And I think positive things will happen there, too. He's a great gentleman. And the Crown Prince, we spoke with the Crown Prince. So we've made tremendous strides. And this is peace in the Middle East without blood all over the sand. I say it. Right now, it's been blood all over the sand for decades and decades and decades. That's all they do is they fight and kill people, and nobody gets anything. And this is strong peace, really strong peace. And it's a different way. We went in the back door, but I call it going in the very smart door. We went in the smart door, and we're getting people, and the Palestinians will absolutely be a member. I don't say that with any bravado. I just tell you the Palestinians will be a member at the right time. At the right time.
Will they have state of themselves and your peace?
We're working a deal. We are talking to the Palestinians. At the right time, they'll be joining too.
And as long as you're president, is annexation off the table? Is that something
We don't want to talk about that right now, but that's working out very well and very fair and very good for the people that are coming in and for Israel. And again, Israel wants peace, and they're a great warring nation if they have to be. You see that. They have the best equipment, they have the best of everything, but they don't want this. After all of these years, even Bibi gets tired of war. But they've been, look, they're a strong nation, a strong power, a strong military nation, but they want to get on with their lives. Israel wants peace. They really want peace. And I give this gentleman a great deal of credit. He's done a great job.
Thank you. Mr. President, I heard a question from one of the people here. Does Israel feel isolated? Heck no. We're breaking out to the entire world because we have a strong free economy, because we have a strong military, because we have a strong relationship with the President of the United States and the American people. And I can tell you that we have a strong relationship throughout the Middle East. The President intimated how many countries are waiting to join this circle of peace. Israel doesn't feel isolated at all. It's enjoying the greatest diplomatic triumph of its history. I think the people who feel isolated are the tyrants of Tehran because of the pressure that the President has applied on them, because of the resistance to this bad Iran deal. They are under pressure. And I hope they'll all come around. I hope everyone will come around to the circle of peace. But no, we don't feel isolated at all. Quite the contrary.
I would say this, there's less isolation right now for Israel than there's ever been. I mean, today they would be less isolated than ever been. I want to just thank your great ambassador, Ron. Thank you very much. How do you feel about isolation? I think you're starting to see the light, huh?
I can imagine what will happen when everyone's courting Israel if this is what isolation looks like.
No, it's good. We love Israel, and I'll tell you what, I have great respect for the countries that have stepped up so beautifully. And you're going to see that in a little while. We're having a ceremony, and thank you all for being here. Thank you very much.
Let's go, guys. Let's go.
On the left of your screen, the President moments ago in the Oval Office with the Prime Minister of Israel and his delegation, Bibi Netanyahu, sitting next to the President of the United States there, realizing a piece of his longtime dream to get other Arab nations to turn away from the Palestinian cause and embrace normal relations with the State of Israel. Now you see a live picture there. That is the South Lawn of the White House, where just moments from now there will be a ceremony to put on paper normalization of relations between Israel and the United Arab Emirates, normalization of relations between Israel and Bahrain. Oren Lieberman is live from the region with us. Vivian Salama, our national security correspondent as well. And I want to start with you, Oren, in the sense that this long has been Bibi Netanyahu's dream to get other Arab nations to say, forget about it. We're exhausted with the Palestinian cause. Let's make peace or at least normalize relations with Israel, move on to economics, move on to scientific exchanges, and put that era behind us. Both President Trump and the Prime Minister indicating they believe more will follow the UAE and Bahrain.
John, you're absolutely right. This was the dream of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In his words, this is peace for peace, not peace for land, not peace for territorial compromise. Of course, that claim seems to ignore the fact that this only moved forward because Israel halted its annexation of parts of the West Bank, essentially preserving a two-state solution and preserving the possibility that that becomes the Palestinian state. But as you just heard in the statements from Netanyahu and from President Donald Trump, this certainly isn't about the Palestinians. It's about Israel, it's about the UAE and Bahrain, and at least to Trump, it's about his re-election efforts in less than 2 months. Nevertheless, it is an historic agreement moving forward here. That it is normalization. It should be noted that these countries have never been at war and they've had covert relations for years now, but those relations now out in the open, and the credit there does go to the White House for the efforts it moved forward, essentially bringing an anti-Iran alliance between the Sunni Gulf states and Israel, a de facto alliance, out into the open here to benefit not only in terms of, as you point out, tourism, economy, finance, health, but also certainly a military edge looking here. It's been reported here, of course, that the UAE looking to acquire Lockheed Martin F-35s out of this. Less clear is what Bahrain is looking to get out of this, but that is certainly an open question as well. They just joined this in the last few days, essentially, as opposed to the UAE, which hopped on board a month ago. It is a big agreement. It cannot avert the fact that there's another major headline here, and that is a coronavirus lockdown with record-breaking numbers. That is a headline Netanyahu wants to get away from. It is a headline he will return to when all of this is over.
A very important point. Oren Lieberman, stay with us. You see the leaders are right there just outside the Oval Office in the colonnade at the White House, prepared to come out for this ceremony. Vivian, Salama to you. Oren makes the point, and it's an important point. There have been covert relations between Israel and many of these Gulf states for many, many years. The president, as he often does at these events, saying things that simply aren't true, talking about they've been fighting for years. Israel has not been fighting the United Arab Emirates. Israel has not been fighting Bahrain. Yes, the UAE and Bahrain have been financial supporters, philosophical supporters, moral supporters of the Palestinian cause. They have condemned Israel regularly for what they view as Israeli aggression and violation of its agreements with the Palestinians. But there's been no fighting. There's been no fighting. But that being said, this is still a significant achievement for this president to get this to the finish line, to get these relations from private out into the public where, whether it's economic partnership, other trade partnerships, scientific exchanges, they can now happen in the public.
That's right, John. And the president obviously looking for a big win here before the election. What was supposed to be the original version of Middle East peace has come a long way since the beginning, since the campaign, in fact, when the president was promising to bring the Palestinians and the Israelis to the table. A little fact check, actually, the president said we're talking to the Palestinians and we're going to get them soon. I asked Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, last week, the architect of a lot of these plans, whether or not they're still speaking to the Palestinians, whether or not there's hope for the Palestinians to come to the table. And Jared actually said they're waiting for the Palestinians to come to us. He said the ball is in their courts. And so he indicated that the U.S. is actually not speaking to the Palestinians currently, and they're waiting for this to kind of play out to see how this goes before they even think about resuming any talks with the Palestinians. And so that's one issue there. Of course, as you mentioned, also the president repeatedly referring to warring nations. I have lived in the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, and I assure you there was no wars while I was there and not before it either. However, they have been, the UAE in particular, has been a supporter to the United States as far as military assistance and backup. The UAE receives its training from the U.S. military as well as the French military, and they are a strong power in the region and becoming stronger every day. Bahrain, on the other hand, does not have the same leverage as the UAE had. Oren just mentioned it's not clear what Bahrain is getting out of this deal. We know, and we heard from the president now, that there are talks to give F-35 stealth fighter jets to the Emirates, and they do have that leverage. Remember, the UAE is an extremely wealthy nation with regard to oil wealth. Abu Dhabi, the capital, has a tremendous amount of oil wealth, and so they do have that leverage. Bahrain does not. It does not have that national resource wealth that the UAE does. But what it does have is Saudi Arabia backing it. Saudi Arabia is essentially an extension of Bahrain. They're connected physically by a causeway, but also the Saudi military offers significant assistance to Bahrain with regard to any military assistance. And, we saw that with the Arab Spring. Bahrain had its own uprising several years ago, and Saudi tanks rolled over that causeway into Bahrain to help them. And we know that the White House has really been eyeing Saudi Arabia as the big fish to this whole entire thing, to get Saudi Arabia and Israel on the same page to normalize relations. And according to several sources I've spoken to, the Crown Prince, the young Crown Prince that has been a big ally of Jared Kushner and the president, is really tempted by this notion. But the king is not. The king, Salman, is still alive and is resistant to that. And so they are using Bahrain as the test case moving forward to see if a Saudi normalization deal can be achieved down the road.
Incredibly important point. And Bahrain, as you noted, strategic importance. It's also it has a U.S. naval base, a very significant U.S. naval base looking across the Gulf at Iran. And Oren, back to you on that point. Vivian just mentioned very smartly the complications of the Saudi internal politics, if you will, because the pieces of this, the UAE today, Bahrain today, the pieces of this would fit nicely into what was once the broader Saudi peace initiative that a couple of years ago was viewed as the path forward, perhaps, and then it collapsed in part because of the transition of power and some internal rivalries within the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The question is, will that be the next step?
You're absolutely right in asking that. It was the 2002 Saudi-led Arab Peace Initiative which was supposed to pave the way for this. Crucially, it called for an end to the conflict first and then normalization. The UAE and Bahrain, although nominally still sticking to the Arab Peace Initiative, have clearly flipped that narrative around and have normalized before an end to the conflict with the Palestinians. Where do the Saudis sit? It was absolutely right to point out that Bahrain is the test case. But is Saudi Arabia the next to normalize relations? President Donald Trump suggesting that there are 5 other countries that want to do so. It's hard to see Saudi at the top of that list, and it's because of King Salman, who is sort of institutionally, historically, culturally a tie to the Palestinian cause, and it's difficult to see him moving forward without some sort of resolution or at least a major move by Israel forward on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Who would be the most likely candidate to be next to normalize relations? Probably Oman. First, Oman put out a very complimentary statement of the Israel-Bahrain agreement. Second, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was just there last year making an official visit. Also, like the UAE, like Bahrain, they've had covert relations in the past, so Oman would be very high on the list of targets for the White House to try to get them to normalize next. Morocco could be on that list, and in the transactional view of Trump, Trump has something very tantalizing he could give them, and that would be recognition of Moroccan sovereignty in occupied Western Sahara, so that might tempt them to normalize relations. Sudan would be another target on the White House's list. Sudan is on the U.S. state sponsor of terror list. If the Trump administration removes that from that list, perhaps they'll be tempted to normalize relations. So these are all the give and take calculations that the White House will make to try to get other nations over that line and build on the momentum they have here between Israel, the UAE, and Bahrain in a shifting Middle East. But it's about the interests of the nations and about the interests of the White House to make these foreign policy moves happen.
Interest, a very important word always when you're dealing with diplomacy, Oren. And back to you, Vivian. The interest here of the President of the United States, let's be clear. They're introducing the First Lady of the United States right now. Let's listen in a little bit to watch the South. This is the South Portico of the White House. See the First Lady of the United States, Mrs. Netanyahu, also walking out from the Rose Garden around onto the South Portico of the White House. You'll remember just a couple weeks back, the same location used during the Republican National Convention. Now it is being used again for a Middle East peace signing. It has been the scene of those in the past as well. In the George H.W. Bush administration as well as in the Bill Clinton administration, none of the promises of those accords came to pass. Those were between Israel and the Palestinians, tentative steps toward what both presidents at the time thought might be a broader peace that has not been realized. Now this president taking a different approach, brokering deals between Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Israel to normalize relations, and the President of the United States saying he expects soon other nations will follow.
Here comes
you hear
Trump.
now, hail to the chief. Here comes the President of the United States with the delegations from Israel, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates.
Ladies and gentlemen,
the President of the United States, accompanied by the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, His Highness, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the United Arab Emirates, and the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Bahrain.
Thank you very much. Please. Thank you. The First Lady and I are honored to welcome to the White House Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel and Mrs. Netanyahu. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah. And Foreign Minister Abdullah bin Zayed, United Arab Emirates, UAE. Thank you very much. And Foreign Minister Abdulaziz Al Zani of Bahrain. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're here this afternoon to change the course of history. After decades of division and conflict, we mark the dawn of a new Middle East. Thanks to the great courage of the leaders of these three countries, we take a major stride toward a future in which people of all faiths and backgrounds live together in peace and prosperity. In a few moments, these visionary leaders will sign the first two peace deals between Israel and the Arab state in more than a quarter century. In Israel's entire history, there have previously been only two such agreements. Now we have achieved two in a single month, and there are more to follow. Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain will establish embassies, exchange ambassadors, and begin the cooperate and work together so strongly to cooperate as partners across the broad range of sectors, from tourism to trade and healthcare to security. They're going to work together. They are friends. The Abraham Accords also opened the door for Muslims around the world to visit the historic sites in Israel and to peacefully pray at Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, the third holiest site in Islam. Together, these agreements will serve as the foundation for a comprehensive peace across the entire region, something which nobody thought was possible, certainly not in this day and age, maybe in many decades from now, but one founded on shared interests, mutual respect, and friendship. To our honored guests from Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain, congratulations on this outstanding achievement. Congratulations. Fantastic. I also want to thank Vice President Mike Pence. Thank you, Mike. Great job. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mike, thank you very much. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien. Robert, thank you. Mr. Jared Kushner. Jared, thank you very much. Ambassador Brian Hook. Thank you very much, Brian. Thank you. Thank you. And Avi Berkowitz. Avi, thank you very much. I also want to give a very special thanks. He's been an incredible ambassador to Israel. David Friedman. That's a very great group of people, great group of patriots. They wanted this to happen so badly. They worked so hard. And again, nobody thought it could happen, and they thought it could happen. They never even doubted it. So I want to thank you all very much. Thank you. For generations, the people of the Middle East have been held back by old conflicts, hostilities, lies, treacheries. So many things held them back. Actually, lies that the Jews and Arabs were enemies and that Al-Aqsa Mosque was under attack. Constantly, they would say it was under attack. These lies passed down from generation to generation, fueled a vicious cycle of terror and violence that spread across the region and all over the world. These agreements prove that the nations of the region are breaking free from the failed approaches of the past. Today's signing sets history on a new course, and there will be other countries very, very soon that will follow these great leaders. The people of the Middle East will no longer allow hatred of Israel to be fomented as an excuse for radicalism or extremism, so important. And they'll no longer allow the great destiny of their region to be denied. On my first foreign trip as president, I had the honor of addressing the leaders of more than 54 Arab and Muslim nations in Saudi Arabia. My message that day was very simple. I urge the nations of the Middle East to set aside their differences, unite against the common enemy of civilization, and work together toward the noble aims of security and prosperity. I offered America's friendship, I offered America's help, but I said clearly that the nations of the regions had to decide what kind of a future they wanted for their children and for their families and for their nation itself. No one could make that choice for them. They had to do that themselves. Today, the world sees that they're choosing cooperation over conflict, friendship over enmity, prosperity over poverty, and hope over despair. They are choosing a future in which Arabs and Israelis, Muslims, Jews, and Christians can live together, pray together, and dream together, side by side in harmony, community, and peace. Once again, let me congratulate the people of Israel, the people of the United Arab Emirates, and the people of the Kingdom of Bahrain. God bless you all. This is an incredible day for the world. This is a really wonderful and beautiful occasion. I want to thank all of the members of Congress for being here, senators, congressmen. And they thought it could happen. They never even doubted it. So, to be fomented of civilization and work together toward the noble aims of security and prosperity. I offered America's friendship. I offered America's help. But I said clearly that the nations of the regions had to decide what kind of a future they wanted for their children and for their families and for their nation itself. No one could make that choice for them. They had to do that themselves. Today, the world sees that they're choosing cooperation over conflict, friendship over enmity, prosperity over poverty, and hope over despair. They are choosing a future in which Arabs and Israelis, Muslims, Jews, and Christians can live together, pray together, and dream together, side by side in harmony, community, and peace. Once again, let me congratulate the people of Israel, the people of the United Arab Emirates, and the people of the Kingdom of Bahrain. God bless you all. This is an incredible day for the world. This is a really wonderful and beautiful occasion. I want to thank all of the members of Congress for being here, senators, congressmen, congresswomen. We just appreciate it so much. Everybody wanted to be here. It's a very important day for the world. It's a very important day for peace. Before the parties sign the accords, I'd like to ask Prime Minister Netanyahu to say a few words, followed by the Foreign Minister of the United Arab Emirates and the Foreign Minister of Bahrain. Thank you very much. It's a great honor. Thank you.
our dear friend President Trump, First Lady Melania Trump, thank you for hosting me, my wife Sarah, and our entire delegation on this historic day. I want to recognize Vice President Pence, Secretary Pompeo, National Security Advisor O'Brien, and other cabinet members, Jared Kushner, Avi Berkowitz, Ambassador Friedman, and other members of the President's able peace team, senators, members of Congress, Israeli Ambassador Ron Dermer, his Emirate and Bahraini counterparts, as well as all the dignitaries gathered here on this sunny day. I want to also express my gratitude for all the Israelis who have worked for years, sometimes in less sunny climes, to bring this date, and I thank each and every one of you. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, this day is a pivot of history. It heralds a new dawn of peace. For thousands of years, the Jewish people have prayed for peace. For decades, the Jewish state has prayed for peace. And this is why today we're filled with such profound gratitude. I am grateful to you, President Trump, for your decisive leadership. You have unequivocally stood by Israel's side. You have boldly confronted the tyrants of Tehran. You've proposed a realistic vision for peace between Israel and the Palestinians. And you have successfully brokered the historic peace that we are signing today, a peace that has broad support in Israel, in America, in the Middle East, indeed in the entire world. I am grateful to Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed of the United Arab Emirates and to you, Foreign Minister Abdullah bin Zayed. I thank you both for your wise leadership and for working with the United States and Israel to expand the circle of peace. I am grateful to King Hamad of Bahrain and to you, Foreign Minister Abdul Latif Al-Zayani, for joining us in bringing hope to all the children of Abraham. To all of Israel's friends in the Middle East, those who are with us today and those who will join us tomorrow, I say, Assalamu alaikum. Peace unto thee. Shalom. And you have heard from the President that he is already lining up more and more countries. This is unimaginable a few years ago, but with resolve, determination, a fresh look at the way peace is done, this is being achieved. Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, the people of Israel well know the price of war. I know the price of war. I was wounded in battle. A fellow soldier, a very close friend of mine, died in my arms. My brother Yoni lost his life while leading his soldiers to rescue hostages held by terrorists at Entebbe. My parents' grief over the loss of Yoni was unrelieved until their dying day. And over the years, when I've come to console the families of Israel's fallen soldiers and victims of terror, I have seen that same grief countless times. And this is why I I am so deeply moved to be here today. For those who bear the wounds of war, cherish the blessings of peace. And the blessings of the peace we make today will be enormous. First, because this peace will eventually expand to include other Arab states, and ultimately it can end the Arab-Israeli conflict once and for all. Second, because the great economic benefits of our partnership will be felt throughout our region, and they will reach every one of our citizens. And third, because this is not only a peace between leaders, it's a peace between peoples. Israelis, Emiratis, and Bahrainis are already embracing one another. We are eager to invest in a future of partnership, prosperity, and peace. We've already begun to cooperate on combating Corona, and I'm sure that together we can find solutions to many of the problems that afflict our region and beyond. So despite the many challenges and hardships that we all face, despite all that, let us pause for a moment to appreciate this remarkable day. Let us rise above any political divide. Let us put all cynicism aside. Let us feel, on this day, the pulse of history. For long after the pandemic is gone, the peace we make today will endure. Ladies and gentlemen, I have devoted my life to securing Israel's place among the nations to ensure the future of the one and only Jewish state. To accomplish that goal, I work to make Israel strong, very strong. For history has taught us that strength brings security, strength brings allies, and ultimately, and this is something President Trump has said again and again, ultimately, strength brings peace. King David expressed this basic truth thousands of years ago in our eternal capital, Jerusalem. His prayer, immortalized in the book of Psalms in the Bible, echoes from our glorious past and guides us towards a brilliant future. Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech et amo b'shalom. May God give strength to his people. May God bless his people with peace. Mr. President, distinguished guests, this week is Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. And what a blessing we bring to this new year. A blessing of friendship, a blessing of hope, a blessing of peace. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, His Highness, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the United Arab Emirates.
Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, and my friend Abdulatif Zayani, distinguished guests, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Let me start by conveying the best regards of the UAE people and the leadership, and especially of Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed, to you, Mr. President, and everyone gathered here today. I'll continue my speech in Arabic, and I'm sure there will be translation to that. أقف اليوم أمد يد سلام وأستقبل يد سلام نقول في ديننا الإسلامي: اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام. فالبحث عن السلم مبدأ أصيل، ولكن المبادئ تتحقق فعلا عندما تتحول إلى أفعال. وها نحن اليوم نشهد فعلا سوف يغير الشرق الأوسط وسيبعث الأمل حول العالم.
I stand here today to extend a hand of peace and receive a hand of peace. In our faith, we say, "O God, you are peace, and from you comes peace." The search for peace is an innate principle, yet principles are effectively realized when they are transformed into action. Today, we are already witnessing a change in the heart of the Middle East, a change that will send hope around the world.
لم تكن هذه المبادرة ممكنة لولا جهود فخامة الرئيس الأمريكي دونالد ترامب وفريقه الذي سعى بجد وإخلاص لنصل إلى هنا. وهنا لابد لي أن أشير إلى صديقي وزير الخارجية مايك بومبيو، وصديقي جاريد كوشنر كبير مستشاري الرئيس الأمريكي، وكل المخلصين لمبدأ السلام في الولايات المتحدة الذين سعوا لتحقيق هذا الإنجاز الكبير. شكرا لكم.
This initiative would not have been possible without the efforts of His Excellency President Donald Trump and his team, who worked hard and sincerely for us all to reach here. Most notably, my counterpart, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Jared Kushner, Senior Advisor to the President of the United States, and all those who are genuine about the principle of peace in the United States, who have strived to realize this major achievement. Thank you.
دولة رئيس الوزراء الإسرائيلي بنجامين نتنياهو، شكرا لك على اختيارك السلام ووقف ضم الأراضي الفلسطينية، مما يعزز إرادتنا المجتمعة لتحقيق مستقبل أفضل للأجيال القادمة.
Your Excellency Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of the State of Israel, thank you for choosing peace and for halting the annexation of Palestinian territories, a decision that reinforces our shared will to achieve a better future for generations to come.
سادة الحضور، نشهد اليوم فكرا جديدا سيخلق مسارا أفضل لمنطقة الشرق الأوسط، فمعاهدة السلام هذه تعد إنجازا تاريخيا لكل من الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية ودولة إسرائيل ودولة الإمارات. لن يتوقف أثرها الإيجابي، بل إننا نؤمن بأن ثمارها ستنعكس على المنطقة بأسرها، فكل خيار غير السلام سيعني دمار وفقر ومعاناة إنسانية. إن هذه الرؤية الجديدة التي بدأت تتشكل باجتماعنا اليوم لمستقبل منطقة مليئة بالطاقات الشابة ليست شعارا نرفعه من أجل مكاسب سياسية، فالجميع يتطلع إلى خلق مستقبل أكثر استقرار وازدهار.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing today a new trend that will create a better path for the Middle East. This peace accord, which is a historic achievement for the United States of America, the State of Israel, and the United Arab Emirates, will continue to have a positive impact, as we believe that its reverberations will be reflected on the entire region. Every option other than peace would signify destruction, poverty, and human suffering. This new vision, which is beginning to take shape as we meet today for the future of the region full of youthful energy, is not a slogan that we raise for political gain, as everyone looks forward to creating a more stable, prosperous, and secure future.
في زمن يسود فيه العلم يتطلع شباب المنطقة ليكونوا جزءا من هذا الحراك الإنساني، وكم يسعدنا أن تكون الإمارات جزءا من قوة الدفع هذا نحو الاستقرار ونمو الطاقات البشرية في مقاربة حضارية جديدة تفتح أبواب الفرص على مصراعيها ليستفيد منها محبي السلام والازدهار والمستقبل. فمجتمعاتنا اليوم تمتلك مقومات التنمية الإنسانية الحديثة من بنية تحتية واقتصاد متين وإنجازات علمية تؤهلها للنهوض بمستقبل الشرق الأوسط.
At a time when science is prevailing, the region's youth are looking forward to taking part in this great humanitarian movement. We are pleased that the United Arab Emirates will be part of the momentum towards stability and the growth of human potential in a new civilized approach that opens wide the doors of opportunity for those who look forward towards peace, prosperity, and the future. Our societies today possess the foundation of modern human development, such as infrastructure, a solid economy, and scientific achievements that will enable them to advance the future of the Middle East.
تؤمن الإمارات بأن دور الولايات المتحدة في المنطقة الشرق الأوسط إيجابي، والدليل هذه المعاهدة التي نوقع اليوم في البيت الأبيض، حيث ستظل في التاريخ الإنساني منارة مضيئة لكل محبي السلام. وبالنسبة لنا فإن هذه المعاهدة ستمكننا من الوقوف أكثر إلى جانب الشعب الفلسطيني وتحقيق آماله في دولة مستقلة ضمن منطقة مستقرة ومزدهرة. تأتي هذه المعاهدات العربية التي وقعت مع إسرائيل في العقود الماضية كخطوة ولبنة مهمة للمستقبل، حيث الهدف من هذه المعاهدات هو العمل نحو الاستقرار والتنمية.
The United Arab Emirates believes that the role of the United States in the Middle East is positive, and this belief is evidenced by the accord that we are signing today at the White House, for which you have taken the lead, and will remain a beacon in human history for all peace-loving people around the world. And as for us in the United Arab Emirates, this accord will enable us to continue to stand by the Palestinian people and realize their hopes for an independent state within a stable and prosperous region. This accord builds upon previous peace agreements signed by Arab nations with the State of Israel. The aim of all these treaties is to work towards stability and sustainable development.
هذه السنة صعبة على العالم الذي يعاني من تداعيات كورونا. عززت بلدي التزاماتها تجاه المبادئ الإنسانية التي أرساها مؤسس دولة الإمارات الشيخ زايد، الذي علمنا بأن وقوف جانب مع الآخر أي من كان هذا الشخص مهما كان انتمائه العرقي أو الديني هو واجب إنساني ومبدأ راسخ.
In this difficult year, when the world is suffering from the repercussions of the COVID-19 pandemic, my country, the United Arab Emirates, has reinforced its humanitarian commitments established by our nation's founding father, Sheikh Zayed, who taught us that standing with others, regardless of their religious or ethnic affiliation, is a humanitarian duty and a firm principle.
استطاعت بلدي أيضا في هذه الظروف الصعبة أن تطلق مسبار إلى المريخ. إن مسبار الأمل في الحقيقة يمثل أمل بأن منطقتنا قادرة على النهوض والتقدم، إذ تبنت الحكومات والشعوب العلوم. وبعد أن أرسلت الإمارات رائد الفضاء هزاع المنصوري العام الماضي إلى محطة الفضاء الدولية وأطلقت محطة سلمية للطاقة النووية، جاءت هذه الاتفاقية لتفتح آفاق أوسع لسلام شامل في المنطقة.
During this difficult time, the United Arab Emirates, my country, was able to launch a probe to Mars. The HOPE probe indeed represents hope that our region is capable of advancement and progress if governments and people embrace science. After the United Arab Emirates sent astronaut Hazza al-Mansouri last year as the first Arab astronaut to reach the International Space Station and launched a peaceful nuclear power plant, this accord opened up prospects for a comprehensive peace in the region.
سادة الحضور، إن السلام يحتاج إلى شجاعة، وصناعة المستقبل تحتاج إلى معرفة، والنهوض بالأمم يحتاج إلى إخلاص ومثابرة. لقد أتينا اليوم لنقول للعالم إن هذا نهجنا. السلام مبدأنا. ومن كانت بداية صحيحة ستكون إنجازاته مشرقة بإذن الله. شكرا جزيلا. Thank you, Mr. President.
Ladies and gentlemen, peace requires courage, and shaping the future requires knowledge. The advancement of nations requires sincerity and persistence. We have come today to tell the world that this is our approach and that peace is our guiding principle. Those who begin things in the right way will reap bright achievements with the grace of God. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
With grace of God, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Bahrain.
Mr. President, the First Lady, Prime Minister, Your Highness, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Today is a truly historic occasion, a moment of hope and opportunity for all the peoples of the Middle East, and in particular for the millions in our younger generations. The declaration supporting peace between the Kingdom of Bahrain and the State of Israel is an historic step on the road to genuine and lasting peace, security and prosperity across the region, and for all who live there, regardless of religion, sect, ethnicity, or ideology. For too long, the Middle East has been set back by conflict and mistrust, causing untold destruction and thwarting the potential of generations of our best and brightest young people. Now, I'm convinced we have the opportunity to change that. Today's declaration was made possible by the vision, courage, and commitment of His Majesty King Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, who, supported by the people of Bahrain, has protected, institutionalized, and enhanced Bahrain's centuries-old spirit of coexistence and harmony, and has the wisdom to recognize that genuine cooperation is the most effective means to achieve peace and to safeguard legitimate rights. Thank you, Your Majesty, for this vision of peace for the region based on trust, respect, and understanding between all faiths, races, and nations. To our brothers in the United Arab Emirates, I congratulate you on your own momentous peace accord being signed today with Israel. His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed has shown great leadership and foresight to make peace possible and secure a brighter future for our region. For the State of Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu, we welcome and appreciate these steps from you and your government, recognizing that enduring peace and security is only possible through a genuine engagement that protects the rights and interests of countries and peoples in the region. In particular, I want to express my deep appreciation to President Donald Trump and his administration. Mr. President, your statesmanship and tireless efforts have brought us here today and made peace a reality. And to Secretary Pompeo, Senior Advisor Jared Kushner, and Special Representative Avi Brikovitz, who have, and others, many others, who have carried out their mandates with dedication and skill. Ladies and gentlemen, today's agreement is an important first step, and it is now incumbent on us to work urgently and actively to bring about the lasting peace and security our peoples deserve. A just, comprehensive, and enduring two-state solution to the Palestinian-Israeli conflict will be the foundation, the bedrock of such peace. We have shown today that such a path is possible, even realistic. What was only dreamed of a few years ago is now achievable, and we can see before us a golden opportunity for peace, security, and prosperity for our region. Let us, together and with our international partners, waste no time in seizing it. Thank you.
the President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and His Highness, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the United Arab Emirates, will sign a treaty of peace, diplomatic relations, and full normalization. They will each sign 3 copies, one in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. We kindly ask that all guests remain seated for the signing of the documents.
Can you be helpful here and tell me your name?
You do the same for me in Arabic.
I will.
So, which one is mine?
Thank you.
That one.
That would be easiest. It's easiest.
26 years.
Can we flip them over or turn them up?
Congratulations. Thank you. Congratulations. Congratulations.
The President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, and the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Bahrain will now sign the Declaration of Peace. They will each sign 3 copies, one in English, Hebrew, and Arabic. We kindly ask that all guests remain seated for the signing of the documents.
I'm keeping this one.
Keep it.
Pass down to your right.
Sure. Yes.
The President of the United States, the Prime Minister of the State of Israel, His Highness, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation of the United Arab Emirates, and the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of the Kingdom of Bahrain will now sign the Abraham Accords. They will each sign 4 copies, one in English, one in Hebrew, and 2 in Arabic.
We are watching an historic peace agreement here at the White House being signed between these 3 nations and the United States. I want to bring in Vivian Salama as well as Oren Lieberman, who is in Jerusalem, and Caitlin Collins is following this from the White House. So, Vivian, this is certainly a big day, this peace accord normalizing relations between Israel and these 2 Arab nations, Bahrain and the UAE. What is your takeaway as you're watching this moment?
Brianna, obviously a very significant day for the Middle East with regard to this historic moment, also for the Trump administration, President Donald Trump in particular. I mean, optics-wise, this was exactly what he had envisioned dating back to the 2016 campaign when he talked about Middle East peace, flags at the White House, and a signing ceremony. And by the way, today's ceremony is not accidentally timed. Actually, the Oslo Accords, which were signed between the Palestinians and the Israelis poison brokered by President Bill Clinton in 1993, where the date was September 13th, and so White House officials had hoped to kind of plan this around then for some significance. However, the difference between that signing and this one is that Palestinians are not involved, and that was the original intention of Middle East peace when the president tasked Jared Kushner with that in 2016. The Palestinians not seeing the Trump administration as an honest broker, and they stopped talking to them. Even as Jared Kushner rolled out his big plan earlier this year, the Palestinians said, nope, we're not going to deal with you. And so they looked for a different alternative, and this is it. The Trump administration looking to bring in Arabs that were largely tolerant of Israel. Actually, they were never at war with Israel, and they were already starting to engage commercially in covert ways with Israel. And so they said that this is going to be their description of what Middle East peace will look like moving forward. And they say that if we can get these Arab countries to the table with Israel and normalize relations, then maybe it will be the start of something bigger down the road. But ultimately, there's one message here, and that is to Iran. This is ultimately an anti-Iran coalition that's starting to form, and that for the Trump administration has been one of the ultimate priorities for the Middle East.
And Caitlin, to Vivian's point there about where the Palestinians are in all of this, we have heard a promise from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who is walking up there on the south side of the White House with the president and the foreign ministers of Bahrain and UAE. He had said that this can end the Israeli-Arab conflict once and for all. That's a big promise when you don't have the Palestinians at the table.
Right, and they know that, and so kind of what we've heard from administration officials is that they are hoping, since they are getting these other Gulf Arab leaders to come to the table to formalize these relations, that it will help basically make the Palestinians have to get behind their proposals. So that's another question, Brianna, but a big thing to watch coming out of this and to see what we're ultimately going to see out of all of this is what happens with those F-35 fighter jets. That is something that UAE has wanted from the United States for a very long time. It has not happened. And now, whenever this agreement was first signed, we were first told about it when we were taken into the Oval Office about a month ago. That was one of the big questions, was that a tacit agreement, that if they did formalize these relations with Israel, then they could get the F-35 fighter jets and these armed sales from the United States. And a lot of administration officials pushed back on that initially, Brianna. They said, no, that is not part of the agreement. Weapon sales are not part of this. And then you heard the president say today on Fox and Friends he has no problem giving the UAE these F-35 fighter jets, which of course is a sale that would have to be approved by Congress. You have to think that if the Israeli prime minister was against that, Congress would likely not approve that sale, but it does really show how the administration is viewing this. And they said yesterday that they would not grant the sale of that if they thought it would threaten Israeli security. That's something that has been a concern for Israel, is giving the F-35s to the UAE. But so that is something that really is a big question to come out of this, is how is that going to happen? What other agreements do we see come out of this? And whether or not there are more armed sales that are going to be a result of this, including the F-35. Now, of course, there's a lot of caution with that. It determines really if President Trump is reelected whether or not that actually goes forward, because it takes so long to make those F-35s. But that is certainly one thing to keep an eye on as a result of these agreements today.